Most people thought Isabella would choose one of the glamorous, wealthy women her father paraded in front of her. After all, her life had been wrapped in gold since birth. But when the moment came, she didn't pick a sparkling, diamond-draped socialite. Instead, she took the hand of the one woman no one in the room even considered a possibility. The woman who polished the floors and served the tea. The gasps that filled the mansion that day still echo in Isabella's memory. And behind that choice lay a story no one was prepared to hear. Isabella's life had always been a picture-perfect postcard. She lived in the sprawling estate of her father, Leonard Whitmore, a man whose name graced skyscrapers and charity galas alike. Every corner of the mansion gleamed under crystal chandeliers, every garden trimmed to perfection by a fleet of gardeners. Her mother, Catherine, had been the heart of their home, warm, witty, and endlessly loving. But 2 years ago, a sudden illness took her away, leaving a silence that not even the ticking of the antique grandfather clock could fill. Leonard loved his daughter, but grief had changed him. He became obsessed with control, with appearances. And then came the announcement. He planned to remarry, but it wasn't going to be just any choice. Isabella would decide who would become her new stepmother. 5 candidates arrived one summer morning, each dripping with elegance and wealth. They came with sparkling jewelry, perfect hair, and the polished smiles of women used to winning. Cameras clicked, journalists whispered, and the staff scurried about serving champagne. Among them, moving silently and unnoticed, was Clara. She was the housekeeper, tall, with gentle eyes and calloused hands from years of work. She wore a simple navy dress and comfortable shoes. Clara wasn't part of the competition, but she had been there for Isabella through the lonely nights, the whispered bedtime stories, the tears when no one else was around. What Isabella didn't know was that her decision that day would set off a chain of events that would expose the very roots of prejudice that still crept through the marble halls of her father's empire. From the moment the contest began, Isabella felt uneasy. The rich women treated her like a prize, not a person. They asked her about her favorite designers, her hobbies, but their eyes flickered with impatience whenever she mentioned her late mother. One woman, Veronica, leaned close and whispered, "Sweetheart, with me as your stepmom, you'll never have to worry about cleaning up after yourself again." She winked, as if that was the secret to happiness. The truth was, Isabella had never worried about cleaning, not because she was rich, but because Clara had always been there, working quietly in the background. Clara had never tried to impress her. She simply listened. She remembered the small details, the bedtime stories, the favorite snacks, the way Isabella hated thunderstorms. But the other women barely acknowledged Clara's existence. At lunch, when Clara brought out the silver platters, one guest murmured, "Strange, isn't it? Someone like her working in a place like this." Her tone was syrupy sweet, but the glance she cast was sharp, dripping with quiet prejudice. It wasn't the first time Isabella had noticed this. Some guests spoke slower or louder when addressing Clara, as if she couldn't possibly understand. Others avoided speaking to her at all. That afternoon, Isabella wandered into the kitchen. Clara was there, washing fruit. She smiled warmly. "You doing okay, sweetheart?" Isabella hesitated. They talk about you like you're not even a person." Clara's hands stilled in the water. "People see what they want to see. Sometimes they don't want to see too much." The final selection dinner was tense. All 5 women sat across from Isabella at a long mahogany table. Leonard made a speech about family values and legacy. The guests laughed, clinked glasses, and smiled at Isabella as though she were a golden ticket. When her father finally asked her to stand and announce her choice, Isabella's heart pounded. She scanned the table. Perfect hair, designer gowns, rehearsed smiles. Then she turned, and her gaze landed on the woman standing quietly by the wall, holding a silver tray. "I choose Clara," Isabella said clearly. The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Silence. Then a collective gasp. One of the women actually choked on her wine. "Isabella, be serious," her father said, his voice tight. "I am serious," she replied. "She's been here for me more than anyone else. She listens. She cares. She's family to me." One of the guests laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "She's a housekeeper. You can't be." "I can," Isabella interrupted. "And I am. You said I could choose." Clara looked stunned. shaking her head slightly as if to say no, don't put me in this position. But Isabella stepped forward and took her hand. The whispers around the table turned into open judgment. This is absurd, one woman said. You'd have the Whitmore name tied to someone like that. Leonard's face was pale. Isabella, this isn't how the world works. Isabella's voice rose, trembling but strong. Then maybe the world is wrong. In that moment, she wasn't just choosing a stepmother. She was challenging the very assumptions that kept people like Clara invisible, unworthy, and underestimated. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, and it was far from over. The next morning, the story was everywhere. Heiress chooses housekeeper as stepmother. Headlines buzzed with disbelief, ridicule, and, from some corners, admiration. Leonard tried to control the narrative, claiming it was a youthful misunderstanding. But Isabella stood firm. In interviews, she spoke about Clara's kindness, her strength, and the quiet dignity she carried despite the prejudice she faced daily. Some people attacked her choice, others called her brave. But for Isabella, it wasn't about bravery, it was about fairness. She had lost her mother once. She refused to lose the only other person who had ever made her feel truly seen. Over time, Leonard's resistance softened. He began to see Clara not as the help, but as the woman who had been holding his family together all along. It didn't erase the years of bias that had seeped into the walls of their mansion, but it was a start, and maybe that's what change really looks like. Not in grand speeches or sweeping laws, but in the quiet, stubborn choices of those who refuse to accept the way things have always been.